That night, my mother looked me dead in the eye and said, "Didn't order for your son." Her grandkids ate $135 worth of food, while my boy watched. But what broke me wasn't the bill. It was what came after. When the waiter said my name, she froze. And then, she collapsed. You think you know family? Wait till you hear this. I was the last one to walk in. That wasn't by accident. It never is with my mother. She said 7:30, but the food had already arrived by then. Plates were half empty, glasses full. Laughter floating above the table like perfume, just enough to seem sweet, but never meant for me. The hostess glanced at me, then over at the table. I caught that slight hesitation, the kind people have when they don't know where to place you. But then her eyes flicked to my face, recognizing something in my features. She gave a tight smile and gestured toward the far end of the long table. I walked past everyone, my sister Tessa with her pearls and perfect posture, my brother Greg pretending he didn't see me, and their kids tapping on phones like I was part of the wallpaper. My son Jordan tugged at his collar, sitting stiffly next to an empty plate. My seat? Closest to the kitchen doors. I didn't even get a greeting from most of them. Just nods, half smiles. The kind people save for old acquaintances they hoped they wouldn't run into. Tessa leaned in, voice honeyed and sharp. "Oh, Mildred, you made it. We were just saying how good it was to start on time for once." I smiled. Just barely. Traffic was lighter than I thought. My mother sat at the head of the table, hair lacquered into submission, eyes sharper than ever. She didn't look at me, but I could feel her watching. The waiter brought another round of drinks, none for me. And in front of Jordan, still nothing, no glass, no plate, just waiting. I turned slightly toward the waiter. "Excuse me." Before I could finish, Mother's voice cut through. "I didn't order for your son." Silence. You'd think someone dropped a glass. No one laughed. Not really. A few chuckled nervously. Greg took a long sip of wine. Tessa picked at her lobster. Jordan leaned closer, whispering, "Did Grandma forget me?" His voice cracked like dry wood. I looked down at him, my hand resting gently over his. No, baby, she didn't forget. But she had, not just tonight, not just him. I motioned for the waiter again, quieter this time. "Can we get a kid's meal, please?" He nodded, uncomfortable, probably not sure what he'd walked into. I sat back, swallowing hard. That old familiar sting wasn't new. It never left. It just waited. And then it came. The memories. They flooded in before I could stop them. Christmas 2 years ago, every grandchild unwrapping shiny gifts, and Jordan handed a box of socks, adult size. "Oops," Tessa had said. "That must have gotten mixed in." No one corrected her, or Jordan's 5th birthday. I'd baked the cake myself, chocolate with cream cheese frosting, his favorite. I placed it on the counter in my mother's kitchen. Hours passed, she never brought it out. Later, I found it in the trash. "We already had pie," she said. "Don't want to overdo it." I should have left then, but I didn't. Tonight wasn't different. It was just visible. The waiter came back. In his hands, a plate with chicken fingers and fries. Simple, warm. He set it down gently, crouched a bit beside Jordan, and then looked up at me. "It's on the house," he said softly. "You've waited long enough." He wasn't just talking about the food. I knew it. He knew it. And then, out of nowhere, a gasp. Mother's eyes widened. Her hand flew to her chest. Tessa cried out, catching her as she slumped forward. Panic surged. "Call 911!" someone shouted. Greg fumbled with his phone. I stood, heart racing, instinct pulling me forward. But as I moved, a firm hand gripped my arm. "Let Tessa handle it," my brother hissed. I froze, right there, mid-step. My hands still raised, not sure what to do with them now. I backed away slowly. They circled around her like a ceremony. Tessa weeping, holding her. Greg yelling at the paramedics. And me, pushed to the perimeter, again. Minutes passed like hours. As they loaded her onto the stretcher, I stood by the window. My reflection hovered next to hers in the glass. "I didn't order for your son." The words looped, hollow and sharp. That wasn't about dinner. That was the message. I remembered what Dr. Keller once said during one of those therapy sessions I didn't tell anyone about. Sometimes family is who you choose, not who you're born into. I hadn't believed it then, but now I did, because I wasn't just tired, I was done. Not with loving, but with begging to be seen. The hospital lobby smelled like antiseptic and reheated coffee. I walked in alone. No one told me where to go. No one had waited. Tessa had taken control, as usual. She probably arrived in the ambulance, playing the devoted daughter with perfect timing. When I asked at the front desk, the nurse frowned at the chart. "You're not listed under emergency contacts," she said. I just nodded. Of course I wasn't. I followed the signs toward the cardiac wing. As I turned the corner, I saw them, Greg, arms crossed, and Tessa leaning in close to our mother's bedside. The door was half shut. I stayed in the hallway, looking through the small window. Dolores looked lively, too lively for someone who'd collapsed a few hours ago. Her hand gestured as she spoke, her mouth curling in laughter. Tessa joined in. Greg cracked a smile. No one glanced my way. A nurse walked past me, glanced down at the bouquet in my hand. "Those from you?" she asked. I nodded. She smiled politely. Tessa said thanks. Of course she did. I stood there, invisible. Again, just outside the frame, watching my own mother recover while I remained in the waiting room of her life. And then I heard it, her voice, muffled but clear enough. "She's always been dramatic. Everything's a scene with her." The nurse shut the door behind her. I didn't move, just held the flowers a little tighter. My fingers trembling now, not from shock, but recognition. Later, after a quiet walk down the hospital corridor, I sat on a bench outside, pulled out my journal from my bag. It was old, creases on the cover, pages dog-eared and smudged with time. I flipped through. There it was, scribbled in pen 10 years ago. They act like I'm too sensitive for noticing I'm always left out. Next page, photos from the wedding of a cousin I hadn't seen in years. In the original, we'd stood at the far end of the group, me with Jordan balanced on my hip. In the version mailed to everyone later, we'd been cropped out, clean, like trimming fat from a steak. I turned another page. Notes about birthdays missed, holidays skipped, messages ignored. One nurse passed by and paused. "You okay, ma'am?" I nodded, slipping the journal back in my purse. "Just catching my breath." She smiled, then added casually, "You know, it's odd. You weren't listed on the chart. It got updated last year. Tessa filled out the form herself." I blinked. "Sorry," she added quickly. I probably shouldn't have said that. But she already had. And that was enough. Tessa hadn't just stepped in. She'd rewritten the script. I wasn't an oversight. I was erased. A few hours later, I sat across from Naomi at the diner near our office. She was young, sharp, always had her nails done just right. We met after my shift ended. The booth smelled like syrup and bleach. She stirred her coffee. "You ever feel like, even when you show up, people treat you like background noise?" I laughed, but it caught in my throat. She leaned in. "You seem like someone who just stopped caring." I didn't answer right away, because that was the lie. I hadn't stopped caring. I'd just gotten better at hiding it. "I still care," I finally said. "I just learned not to expect much." Naomi looked at me, eyes wide. "You make silence look strong." That hit harder than I expected. Strong. No, just quiet. And maybe that was its own kind of weakness. Later that evening, back home, Jordan came into the room holding an old piece of paper. It was a drawing, crayon lines, crooked smiles, a dinner table, everyone seated, except me and him. We were off to the side, small, distant, like guests, not family. "Why didn't Grandma ever like me?" he asked. I didn't have an answer that wouldn't break something in him, so I pulled him into a hug. "You," I whispered, "are unforgettable, even when they try to pretend otherwise." He leaned into me, quiet, but his drawing stayed on the table, an echo I couldn't ignore. That night, after he went to bed, I sat on the couch and scrolled through old texts, Messages from my mother. Dozens of them, all short, all demanding. Where's that recipe? Call me back. Need a ride to the doctor. Each one ended with, when you're not busy, never once asking if I was okay, never, how are you? I hovered my thumb over the delete button. Didn't press it, not yet, but the urge was there. New, strange, liberating. I realized maybe I'd been asking the wrong question all these years. It wasn't, why don't they love me? It was, why do I keep waiting for them to? The message appeared early Sunday morning on my phone, formatted like a family group chat but addressed with subtle exclusion. Brunch at Penelope's, 11 a.m., sharp. See you there. No question, no invitation. I stared at it. Jordan slept beside me. I considered ignoring it, but he nudged, half awake. They'll talk about us, he said. I changed into the bold scarf Grandma left behind and looked at myself in the mirror. It felt like a signal. I wouldn't hide today. I waited a moment, breathing, telling myself I'd walk in straight. No apology, no letdown. Entering Penelope's house was stepping into a picture I never belonged to. Laughter spilled over brunch tables. I found the door open, just enough. No one saying hello. I stood in the kitchen entry, unpacking my mask of calm before I walked into the living room full of chatter. Penelope greeted me immediately. You made it, she said. Emphasis on you. A pause. An invitation to apology. She smiled thinly. Tessa, already perched by the buffet, launched into her version of, we've been discussing Grandma's surgery. She spoke like she held the meeting, like I was an assistant sent late. I tried to slip in. I can help. She cut me off. No need, Mildred, just grab some napkins. My stomach twisted. Dolores sat back with toast in hand, eyes soft but quiet. Her silence stung more than any attack. In that moment, Penelope introduced me to her neighbor with a pointed twist. This is Dolores's distant cousin from Houston. A quiet verbal blow. I smiled at the neighbor. Nice to meet you. No correction, no clenching fists, just the faintest ache. I poured orange juice slowly. I watched the room shift. New tension, eyes scanning. My inner voice asked, is erasing me supposed to make you larger? Then I asked Jordan to hand me Dolores's medicine list. Everyone froze. That list. I organized it, logged times, made calls. None of them knew. Dolores looked startled. I said softly, I take care of this now. Silence. The table had no words. Later, Dolores pulled me aside. Her voice quiet, her eyes troubled. Couldn't you let them feel important once in a while? The irony hit like a slap. I looked at her, not with anger, but grieving clarity. You didn't lose me because I was difficult, I told her. You lost me because I finally stopped believing I ever mattered the way I thought I did. She swallowed. No response. I walked back to the table with steady steps. No dramatics. The room felt colder. I sat. I met Jordan's eyes. He gave me a faint nod. When brunch ended, Jordan slipped his arm into mine as we walked to the car. You didn't flinch, he said. I smiled, voice low. I flinched years ago. Now I just carry quietly. He looked at me. I heard, Penelope. Proud of how you handled it. We drove away in silence, the afternoon sunshine fading behind us. In my mind, I said it aloud. No more erasing. Not me, not him. It was one of those still evenings where the world outside seemed to have exhaled and gone quiet. The heater hummed softly, a pot of chili simmered on the stove, and the air smelled faintly of dried leaves and burnt cinnamon. I was rinsing the last dish from dinner when Jordan stepped in from the front porch with the day's mail. Looks like you got something weird, he said, tossing a thick beige envelope onto the counter. No return address, just my name in ink that looked shaky, uneven, aged. I dried my hands, picked it up without thinking. Probably another medical billing update, I figured. Maybe something about Mother's aftercare or the insurance on the facility. But the moment I tore it open and saw the handwriting inside, my breath hitched. It was him, my father. His loops and slants were unmistakable. I hadn't seen it in years, not since the last card he wrote Jordan for his birthday. To my youngest, Mildred. I stared at the postmark. It was dated 3 years before he died. Folded inside was a note, stapled at the top. Found in personal effects of Dolores T. I sat down, legs suddenly heavy, and laid the paper flat across the table. My hands hovered, then slowly pressed the corners down. A letter meant for me, never delivered. His words began gently, the way he always spoke when he thought no one else was listening. Mildred, if this finds you, I hope it finds you strong. I've failed in more ways than I can count, but not writing this would have been the biggest one. I saw how they treated you, how Dolores and Tessa made you feel like you were always one step behind, one favor short. I let it happen. I thought keeping peace in the house meant letting some things slide. I was wrong. You were the one who stayed kind even when kindness wasn't rewarded. That's strength, not weakness. I felt my eyes burn but didn't cry. I kept reading. I've left a portion of my savings, meant for your future. A little something to help you and Jordan for whatever comes next. Dolores will handle the transfer. Trust her judgment. I stopped breathing. The words echoed in my head, not because of what he intended, but because I knew what they meant. That money, I never saw it. I never even heard about it. Dolores had. She'd gotten the letter. She had it. She kept it. And the money? Probably folded into some emergency fund she claimed was necessary, or lost in the maze of lies she built to control everything after he passed. I picked up the phone with a calm I didn't feel and dialed Tessa. She answered almost instantly. Well, look who's calling. Her voice chirped like everything was normal. Do you know anything about a letter Dad wrote me? Pause. Then a light chuckle. Oh, that old thing. Yeah, Mom found it. She thought it'd just confuse you. Confuse me? You didn't think I deserved to know he left something for me? It wasn't about that, she said flatly. Mom said it would have only stirred up guilt. Dad wasn't in his right mind near the end, Mildred. He'd say all sorts of things. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't have to. You kept a part of him from me. On purpose. Oh, come on. Don't turn this into a drama. It's been years. You can keep pretending you protected me, I interrupted, voice like steel. But the truth always arrives, even when it's late. I ended the call. For a long while, I just sat there with the letter open under the warm kitchen light. His handwriting had a slight tremble, not from age, but feeling. I could almost hear his voice as I read each word again. And then I remembered. That last week in the hospital. He looked at me, eyes glassy with pain and medication, and asked, Did you ever get my note? I'd brushed it off as confusion. Now I knew better. This wasn't about money anymore. It was about the right to know my story, to be seen, heard, counted. I got up, found a clean folder, and labeled it Truth. I slid the letter inside, along with Jordan's birth certificate, my history and my future, side by side. A few minutes later, Jordan wandered back in, rubbing his eyes. You okay? He asked. I nodded. I got a letter, from Grandpa. He sat across from me, curious. What's it say? I read a line aloud. You were born to stand alone, not to be left behind. Jordan's eyes softened. That sounds like he really knew you. We sat in silence for a moment. Then he whispered, Does it change anything? Everything, I said, but not the way you think. We don't heal by forgiving lies, Jordan. We heal by refusing to live inside them. He leaned in, wrapped his arms around me. Then we start new. And for the first time in years, I believed that might actually be possible. I sat at my desk late into the evening, the lamp casting a pale glow across the scattered papers. Bank statements, old letters, pharmacy receipts, all of them lined up like witnesses waiting to testify. Jordan was upstairs doing homework. Occasionally, I heard the rustle of his pencil. Our bond, quiet in that moment, felt like strength beneath all this anger. I replayed Tessa's words again. It would only confuse you. The suspicion pressed at me. The envelope stolen. The inheritance vanished. I drew a mental map on a scrap sheet. Who had access? Who had keys? Who could intercept? My breath tightened when I slid open a folder labeled Office Confidential. Inside, a surveillance recording from Marcy's office stood out. My finger hovered over the file name. If I open it, it changes everything. I clicked play. On screen, Marcy steps into her private office, between locked cabinets. She pulls out a few pages from a stack, replacing them with others. Her face is in shadow. Her lips move, whispering, "This never reaches her." My pulse hammered. I paused it, rewound. There, Marcy's hand, bending pages. The sound is hushed, but clear. Then it shifts. In the background, my mother's voice, quiet and hesitant. "I trusted you." I froze. Betrayal was deeper than I suspected. Mother was part of this. I exported the video, encrypted it, prepared an email time-stamped and addressed to Mother, copying Penelope. The weight of that sentence settled. She had known. I stood and moved to the mirror in my hallway. I practiced aloud. "I gave you silence for years. Now I'll give you truth." I held my posture, steadied my tone. Then I sent texts to Naomi and Sable. "Meet me at the restaurant, 8 p.m. Bring phone." Jordan peeked through the doorway. "Mom, are you really going to show them?" I nodded, touched his shoulder. "I'm going to make them see." I changed into a bold outfit, a dark blouse, clean lines, no need to hide. I tucked the USB drive into my purse. Time was now. At the restaurant where it all began, I had arranged with the manager to project onto the big screen. Family gathered. Tessa, Dolores, Marcy, Penelope, and guests. They all looked settled, confident. Until I stepped in, USB in hand. I walked to the display table and plugged it in. Pause. The room dimmed. Murmurs. Then I said, "This family loves secrets. Tonight, I bring truth." On the screen rolled images of Marcy rearranging pages, the signature alterations, and in the end, my mother's voice. "I trusted you." Gasps fluttered through the room. Some rose, some leaned in. Guests reached for phones. Marcy's face went pale. Dolores clutched her chest. Tessa looked like she might collapse. I narrated, "You erased me, but you cannot erase your actions." Silence hung after the video ended. The screen flickered back to blank. Dolores stood, voice trembling, began an apology, then stopped. Marcy rushed out. Tessa parted her lips, but no words came. The guests shifted, eyes wide. I moved to Jordan, took his hand and whispered, "We'll walk out together, but they can watch us go." I left the USB on the table, evidence laid bare. As I turned away, I felt something shift inside me, release. The first real step in reclaiming what was taken. The sky was a soft gold as evening settled over Dolores's garden. I had asked the family to meet where memories lived, where laughter used to echo across that old patio. Chairs were arranged around a long table. Lamps hung from trees. Marcy and Tessa stood close, exchanging glances. Guests whispered among themselves. Jordan sat beside me, nervous but silent, gripping my hand. I cleared my throat and said, "We've all shared meals, stories, grief, but none of us has ever asked one question out loud. Who controls my legacy?" I handed folders to my sisters and to Mother, property records, bank statements, the old deed. Their faces shifted. I watched Marcy's jaw tighten. Tessa's eyes flickered. Dolores looked back and forth, trying to maintain composure. "I discovered something tonight," I continued. "The beachfront property, the stake in Dad's holdings, those were all once in my name. Now they're in Marcy's. See this change of ownership filing? These transfers. These signatures?" I laid out documents. The guests murmured. Marcy opened her mouth, then closed it. Tessa claimed ignorance. Dolores stiffened. I pushed. Why was my name erased from what Dad intended for me? They all went still. Jordan slipped away quietly into a side room. I watched him through the lattice, heart tight. He paused at the open window and overheard Marcy whisper to Tessa, "Remove her name. Always keep her quiet." He froze. Footsteps behind him. Tessa's voice. "Best if she never knows." Jordan's eyes widened. He backed away, heavy with what he heard. In that moment, he was no longer a bystander. I returned to the table. "My son just walked out because he heard you plotting," I said, voice steady. Eyes fell to Marcy. I addressed her. "You thought you could rewrite my history in secret." Marcy stammered, tried excuses. Tessa jumped in, blaming paperwork errors. I interrupted coldly. "Errors don't need exact signatures or cover-ups. You falsified records and hid it. That's not a mistake." The air cracked. Some guests gasped. Others sank deeper into their seats. Dolores began to weep. Tessa's face drained. Marcy muttered, "You're making this up." I shook my head. "I know what I saw. I know what Jordan heard. You can try to deny it all you want, but truth doesn't evaporate because you fear it." Then Marcy's composure broke. She stormed from the garden, running toward the house. Tessa remained frozen, tears in her eyes. Dolores covered her face, silent sobs. I turned to Jordan as he emerged from the shadows. He stepped forward, voice soft. "I heard it all. I believe you." That confirmation cracked something open in me. Sadness and vindication tangled. I reached for his hand. "We will rebuild," I said, "but this time on my terms." Night air settled around us. Truth had been wielded. The war ahead was real. But now I stood at the front, weapon in hand. I picked the same steakhouse where it all began. The lights were warmer tonight, the air heavier. Family arrived in hushes and glances. Marcy, Tessa, and Penelope hovered near the entrance, their eyes on me like judges reviewing a case. Jordan walked beside me, steady, silent, his presence like armor. I greeted them with a clear voice. "Tonight we finish." I signaled the manager to dim lights, connect the projection. The hum of electronics started. I watched faces tighten. I felt a steady pulse of power return. As I began speaking, Dolores rose. Her breath caught. She clutched her chest and collapsed. The gasp from the room split the air. Panic flooded. Chairs scraped. Servers rushed forward. I paused the projection, jumped to help, pushed through the crowd. Medics came. Marcy fell to her knees beside Mother. Tessa tried to order chaos. In that moment, lights flickered off. Then someone restarted the projector. On the screen ran the contract revocation. "This agreement is null and void." The crowd gasped anew. The screen revealed the one-page contract signed by Dolores, stripping me of all rights. "All rights and ownership hereby revert to Marcy Birch." The signature was hers, the date questionable. I felt my heart freeze. Marcy tried to speak. "Mom wanted simplicity." Tessa cried that it was a misunderstanding. I cut in. "Mom didn't sign this in the dark." Behind me, the video from before replayed, evidence still in motion. The room stood silent. Some rose, some backed away. I moved closer to Mother, the paramedics working behind us. I addressed the family. "You wielded contracts like weapons, hoping I'd stay silent. But contracts don't heal hearts. Betrayal doesn't vanish by signature." I turned to Marcy. "You changed lines, but truth still reads on the page." She stuttered. Tessa whimpered. Dolores, half-conscious, whispered, "I trusted them for you." I gripped her hand tightly. The betrayal was no longer one person's, it was complicity. I stepped away. Jordan, Sable by my side, we exited quietly among stunned onlookers. I left the revocation, the deed, and every signed paper on the banquet table. The projector kept showing them, document after document. People murmured, took pictures. Marcy tried to speak, but no one listened. Outside, night air wrapped us. I exhaled a breath I didn't realize I'd held. "This is not the end. It's the reckoning," I whispered. Jordan squeezed my hand. The mask had fallen. A week passed. The dust from that night at the steakhouse hadn't fully settled, but my home was quiet again. It was a mild afternoon. Orion was outside on the swing. The air smelled like rain that never came. I was folding laundry when the doorbell rang. A courier stood there, holding a flat legal envelope. It had the embossed seal of Dolores's estate attorney. I knew that logo like an old scar. I signed, shut the door, and stared at it for a while before sliding my finger under the flap. Inside was a letter, Dolores's handwriting, unmistakable, dated months before she collapsed. Her words were clear. She called out her regrets, not just for what she did, but for what she allowed. "I didn't protect you," she wrote, "but I see now who truly held us together." Folded beneath the letter was the real final will, a revocation of all the earlier transfers, every deed, every title, every trust fund, redirected to Orion, under my care until he turns 21. My hands trembled, not out of greed, out of the weight of it, that after everything, she saw. That evening, Orion padded into the kitchen in socks too big for him. He saw the letter on the table. "Grandma left me something?" His voice carried both awe and uncertainty. I knelt down beside him. "She saw who you are, even if it took too long." He looked up. "I don't want her stuff. I just wanted a grandma." I pulled him into a hug so tight it hurt. "That's why she left it to you." I placed the documents in the fireproof box beside the safe. "You don't have to carry it now," I told him. "That weight belongs to grown-ups." The next few days, I stepped back into the world. Sable invited me to a local art show at the community center. I hadn't said yes to something like that in years. At first, I just walked the hall quietly. But then, people started talking to me. Women my age, younger, older. Sable nudged me toward a small discussion circle. I spoke, unsure at first. But the words came, about boundaries, about legacy, about letting go, not to forget, but to live. One woman across the circle wiped her eyes and said, "You just said everything I've never known how to say." I didn't need to relive the pain to matter. My voice didn't belong to what broke me. It belonged to what I built afterward. A few mornings later, I heard the gate click. Marcy and Tessa stood on my porch. No accusations, no drama, just quiet, reluctant curiosity. "Did she really change the will?" Tessa asked. Her voice wasn't defiant, just small. I didn't raise mine. I handed them a copy. "You can read it, but I've already moved on." Marcy scanned the document, her eyes darting. "It was supposed to be us." "It was always all of us," I said. "You just kept choosing you." I didn't slam the door. I left it ajar. They turned and walked down the steps, slower than they'd arrived. That was enough. I didn't need a win. I needed peace. That Sunday, Orion and I dug a hole in the backyard. He held the sapling while I packed the dirt in around it. "Why this tree?" he asked. "Because it takes time. Roots don't rush, and neither will we." Jordan brought out lemonade. We sat under the porch as the sun dipped low. A jazz tune floated from the kitchen radio. Orion rested his head against my arm. Not every battle needs a winner. Sometimes, survival is the victory.